Hey everyone, I'm Colette and I'm so happy to welcome you here to Which Ways Today and to my channel. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the elements. A few weeks ago I did kind of a elemental 101 on their associations and traditional meanings are, but I wanted to do another video that was completely different. Something that was designed more to help you get to know what your process is around the elements, what you might associate with them, and how to get past kind of those blocks that keep you from tapping into your intuition. I hope you enjoy. And at this point, I want to start by just saying that I believe these spirits and powers are 100% real. But sometimes people can get really hung up on doing it right, and that can make them struggle to get past that barrier of self-editing and self-doubt. And so a technique where you go into play mode and just imagine things can help you go into a deeper relationship with things without worrying about if it's right. So today I want to approach this from an imagining sort of place. I don't even want to call this process a visualization. I just want it to be more of a kind of daydream that you do for each element to understand more about the way they show up for you. I'm going to give you the basics of this practice, and then you can adapt it to work however it might work for you. I'm going to start with Earth to give you a more full-fledged example of what this practice might look like, but I would really suggest that you work with whatever element and start with whatever element you like the most and you feel most comfortable with. To begin, just find a place where you won't be disturbed and you can comfortably relax or even lay down. It's fine if you fall asleep. You can work outside if that's helpful to you. Take some slow breaths and try and move into a place that's kind of daydreamy and kind of a what if. So with Earth, what you would do is try to imagine a place that seems really earthy and very comfortable to you. Maybe it's a favorite place, or maybe you could imagine that you are a writer or an artist and you're trying to create a huge fantasy tale that's very elaborate about a land of the earth spirits. And you could also try imagining yourself surrounded by things like trees, rocks, or mountains, if those are good keys for you, if that helps you move into that imagining place and let it get more real. But do whatever works for you. Just daydream. And as this place unfolds around you, just notice what's there and notice, what do you want to see in this place? What colors and sounds and objects do you want to put in this place? What kind of animals or beings might live there? What does it feel like to you? And what feelings do you want to evoke in this place? Or what feelings do you think are appropriate here in this creative, totally unreal, imaginative fantasy land? Sometimes what comes up will surprise you, and that's totally okay. You might get distracted, and that's also okay. Just notice that you're distracted and come back to creating this magical fantasy land that has no limits and can hold whatever you want it to hold. Maybe you even want to imagine yourself in this place, and if you do, what are you wearing and what do you look like in this place? Again, let your imagination run wild. When you feel ready and you feel like your attention is really kind of starting to waver, bring yourself back to normal reality and let that daydream kind of get smaller and smaller and smaller and fade away. Don't take too much time with it or you will get distracted and get frustrated. In a few minutes, I'm going to give some ways that you can bring this practice into your magic and start to make use of it. But first, I just want to give you a few keys about ways to work with some of the other elements. I'm not going to go over the whole practice again. At the end, I'm going to go over how intermediate users can work with this. For air, however, you can start by just imagining whatever images work for you. But some ideas that seem like they work well for people is to imagine long grass rippling in the wind, or seeing yourself on the top of a hilltop, hearing the sounds of the wind in the trees, visualizing birds overhead, or maybe even seeing yourself floating on a lovely breeze or even on a cloud, and then go through that whole process of noticing what's there, peopling it with the beings that are there, etc., and then come back. So fire's a little trickier, but I would maybe try imagining yourself surrounded by candles that fill you with excitement and creativity, and that you feel really safe and held in that space. Or you can imagine yourself sitting by a fire that's just the right temperature for you and makes you feel comfortable and safe and warm. And when it's time to work with water, you could imagine yourself swimming deep under the surface and noticing what's there and really letting the underwater world expand. Or you could see yourself floating down a stream, or swimming in an amazing lake, or floating in a hot spring out somewhere lovely in nature with lots of waterfalls around you. Whatever works for you. What is your ideal water landscape? And letting that get built up, and again noticing what and who is there and what it feels like. I don't feel like this particular exercise works very well for working with what people call center or spirit or ether, depending on your particular tradition of magic that you work with. The next thing I want to say to you is don't edit. When you're starting out, write everything down, and over time you'll start to see what things are consistent. And even if something isn't consistent and doesn't show up every time, if it feels right to you, keep it and include it. That's okay. There will be things that drop away over time where you're like, oh, maybe that really wasn't part of it. And that's also okay. This is just about really immersing yourself in a more creative and somatic practice to start a relationship with the elements. You're just trying something out and seeing if it works and what kind of information you can get. You can absolutely look up and work with traditional associations when you're starting out. For some people, that might feel like the safest and most comfortable thing to do. It gives you a structure, but I think it's also really helpful to just get past that creative block by using your imagination and finding out how you relate to these elemental landscapes. And over time, you'll find ways to merge traditional associations with what they mean to you. And to start to bring this into your magic so that it actually is helpful in your practice, one of the things that you can do is to create a small section of your altar or a whole altar based on what you felt and saw and heard in that magical landscape of that particular element. And it's important to not get hung up on replicating it exactly, or making it realistic or anything like that. Just try and find a few objects that go, yeah, I think that thing would belong in that particular landscape, and place them on the altar, and just add to those objects over time as you continue to work with your imagination. And then that way you can start to bring this and make it real in your magical practice. Another way to work with this to help you remember it is that you can place on the altar a drawing, painting, sigil, or a magical map of that landscape that you visited. And again, here it's really important to not get hung up on it being realistic or looking exactly the same way that you saw it. It will work really well for you if you are most comfortable being kind of abstract and working with colors and shapes and energy flows, and that can be helpful to some people. If you are intermediate, you already know that this is real. And one of the ways you can work with that is let yourself go a little bit back into that landscape and feel it when you are calling the elements to you or creating an altar for any kind of magical working where you're using elements. Another thing that you can do if you're intermediate and you have the skills to do this is to try this out as an actual visualization instead of just make believe. And you can only do this if you have some kind of mechanism or skill for protecting yourself while you're doing magical work. Maybe something like casting a circle or whatever practice you use for protection during magic. And you can also try creating your own set of magical correspondences based on what you experience in this place. Okay, Mr. Kitten, I'm almost done. You just have to be quiet for a little bit longer. Let me know in the comments what elements feel easiest for you to work with. Thank you all for sharing, liking, subscribing to my channel. It's really appreciated, and it's really important to feed the algorithm gods. I also would ask you to check out my Patreon page if you feel called. It supports me in continuing to make these videos. Until next time, stay safe and be well.